to another day of adventures with Wes and Jeff, and it's Wes this time, and I'm in the state of South Carolina at Congaree National Park. This is located about 30 miles south of the state capital of South Carolina, which is Columbia, and about an hour and a half north of Charleston here in South Carolina. This park is located in a floodplain of the Congaree River, and it is a unique park in that it is the largest concentration of old growth cypress trees in the world. So stick with me today and I will show you the things to see and do here at this unique park. As a reporter and editor of the state newspaper, Harry Hampton, the one that they named this visitor center after, began a campaign in the 1950s to save the Congaree River floodplain. As an avid outdoorsman and hunter, he spent time exploring this old growth forest. National Park. I am at the Boardwalk Trail, and it's a 2.4 mile raised wooded boardwalk that's wheelchair accessible, easy for small children, and this will take me along the cypress trees and the different trees and habitat here at Congaree National Park. So join me on this 2.4 mile hike on the boardwalk trail. It's about the only one I'm going to do today. It is the most accessible. This is springtime. It's the beginning of May, and the boardwalk is completely accessible. Sometimes during the year it is not accessible because the water is deep enough that it comes up to the boardwalk. But there's several other trails. There's a campground here as well. So join me here on this trail and we'll see those old ancient trees and hopefully see some wildlife and different things here on this trail. Congaree National Park is 26,000 acres large, and it has annual visitors that visit this park of 250,000. So not much, and it's ranked one of the lowest, like number 51 out of all 63 parks here in the United States. Back in 1976, Congress recognized this area as the Congaree Swamp National Monument, and so it was designated as a national monument back in 1976. But then in 2003, it was redesignated as a national park. So it's one of our more recent national parks that was established by Congress here in the United States. So just a little history on this national park. On the Boardwalk Trail, there are several areas that you can have a seat and just take in this wooded forest of ancient cypress trees and different pine, etc. But it's very lush. It had just rained here, so everything is wet, but it's a beautiful place, quiet and serene. It's early in the morning. There's not many folks on the trail. On the Boardwalk Trail, be sure to pick up a self-guided map, and it will give you description of those areas here along the Boardwalk Trail. This is stop number 1, and it will tell you the different trees and the different things that you see here. Congaree National Park protects the largest remaining tract of old growth bottomland hardwood trees in North America. And behind me is the American beech tree, B-E-C-H, identified as its smooth gray bark. This one in particular is over 100 years old and very tall. It's got this smooth gray bark, and it's this species of tree was important to the Native Americans, the Congaree Indians here in South Carolina, in this floodplain for its beech nuts that were collected and on the ground they were gathered here by the Native Americans, and they were ground into flour for bread and meal cakes. As you look on the ground on either side of the boardwalk, you'll notice a dark colored mud, a mixture of clay and old leaves. This mud is called Duravan muck and is 8 feet thick and plays an important role in the health of the floodplain. It filters water, traps pollution, and turns pollutants into harmless components. By filtering the water, it keeps the floodplain and the Congaree River clean. So all this gets filtered down when it floods in through here and provides rich nutrient silt that feeds and nourishes this floodplain and keeps all of these trees and plants growing nice and strong. But there's a lot of water standing on either side of the boardwalk today here in the spring time, and you can see it in amongst the trees. But these trees love this type of habitat. So I can hear it raining just above me in the canopy, and just a few sprinkles are making their way down to the boardwalk and keeping it moist, but it's still very nice and a pleasant walk through the boardwalk here. You can see all of the moss growing and everything here along the boardwalk trail. Walking along the boardwalk trail, one of the most interesting things here at this old growth forest is the bald cypress. And the bald cypress have these knees that rise up from the forest floor around the base of the tree. And these knees come from the roots of the trees and can be seen throughout the forest floor. They are like little knobs, and their function's not entirely understood, but it's believed that these knees provide the tree with extra structural support during the floods and the high winds. And the bald cypress trees can live to be over 1,000 years old. Cypress wood is rot and water resistant, so the wood is often called wood external because it decays slowly and may remain in perfect condition for over 100 years of use. Historically, the tribes that were early settlers here used the bald cypress wood for canoes because it is easy to work with and durable. And the bald cypress trees were logged in the late 1800s and used in roof shingles, docks, bridges, and carpentry, cabinetry, and more, which is why so few growth of these bald cypress trees exist today. But they have preserved them here, and so we are able to enjoy these bald cypress trees and all of these wonderful little knees that pop up from the forest floor here at Congaree. This is also a big area for fireflies. So they have an annual firefly festival where they show the fireflies come out, and they are in their entirety for the mating season, and they are lighting up. Here's some more of those bald cypress trees. That's what they look like. Very durable, rot resistant. And these are some of those knees of the root system of this amazing tree that spring up all around the base of the tree and help anchor it. And they're not additional trees, they're just part of the root system. So, very interesting tree and very tall. I mean, these trees here are probably 100 feet tall or so, and very interesting. Due to the slight increase in elevation of only a few inches, switch cane dominates the forest floor in this area. Although it looks similar in bamboo, it's an invasive plant here in South Carolina that's more closely related to sugarcane. And the dense growth of switch cane is called cane brake. And cane brakes were prevalent in South Carolina during early European settlements, that the phrase was historically used on maps to describe vast areas of switch cane. So this is a switch cane plant, and it grows in this environment. Not so much totally saturated, but partially saturated in certain times of year. So switch cane. Areas on each side of the boardwalk here are called guts, G-U-T, or sloughs. And they're the low channels in the forest that keep and help disperse the water throughout the floodplain here in the Congaree River flood channel. And the guts fill with water prior to the entire forest flooding. And during the floods, the silt and soil are redeposited and replenishing the floodplain with nutrients. So this is kind of a slough or a gut in the forest. Here behind me on the boardwalk is a loblolly pine tree. These are the tallest living tree in South Carolina, and this particular tree here behind me is the tallest at 150 feet tall, and it's the state champion. So it likes this wet conditions here at Congaree National Park, and it is their champion. So let's take a look at a pine tree. It's got this interesting bark on it that has like moss growing in between the sections of the bark. But it's right here in the forest, right along the boardwalk at the marker number 11. And if you snag one of those maps, it'll tell you about it. But this is the state champion tree. It's a pine tree, so it's an evergreen, and it has the evergreen pine needles on it. So walking along the boardwalk trail here, about the midway point in the Boardwalk Loop trail is the Weston Lake. And the Weston Lake is an oxbow lake and a section of the Congaree River. And this is interesting because there is a alligator. He's just resting right there, just floating in this Weston Lake. They have alligators, and you can canoe this. And they have like snapping turtles. Oh, there's a snapping turtle right there below me, just kind of hanging out in the Weston Lake. He's poking his head up, just floating along. So it's kind of a peaceful spot here. Snapping turtle. And lots of wildlife in the Congaree River here, the Weston Lake. Let's see if I can zoom in one more time to that alligator that's just floating there in the water. Beautiful. But this Weston Lake is now an oxbow lake, and it is over 2,000 years ago. The river gradually changed its course and meandered south, leaving behind this Weston Lake area. The lake is slowly filling in with clay and organic debris today, and the freshwater turtles, such as the yellow-bellied slider and the common snapping turtle, are often spotted here in the warmer months of the year, and all plants and animals in the park are protected, of course. But you can help protect the wildlife by not handling or disturbing any of them. But I don't think I'm going to be climbing in these waters today with these alligators and snapping turtles here at Weston Lake. But beautiful. Lots of reflections of the trees into the water. couple of them in the water here at Weston Lake. Just floating around, checking it out. Here's a second one that's coming up here. There he is. Checking me out. They're tall. They're the tallest trees in this forest, and it makes them susceptible to lightning strikes. And they grow the tallest and they emerge above the canopy, so lightning strikes these trees more often than any others, and making them the target for the lightning strikes in the area. What appears to be damage is actually an opportunity for beetles and termites and the fungi that grow. This one got struck by lightning and is dead now, but it helps out with the forest animals and insects. The state of Carolina is known as the Palmetto State. So it's named after the state tree is their cabbage palmetto, which has a big fan leaf. So it's their state tree, and it's named after the cabbage palmetto. The short fan-like palms reside along the boardwalk here are dwarf, but the palmettos are relatives of the cabbage palmetto. They are one of the hardiest palms due to their ability to withstand the freezing temperatures. Dwarf palmettos thrive best in the wet, sandy areas here, and they can withstand the hurricanes and causes of the gap canopy in several of the areas, allowing sunlight to reach the forest floor. So if you take a look here, quite a few of them, these palm that lay here on the forest floor here at the boardwalk. Back in 1919, the 18th Amendment to our Constitution here in the United States was amended to prohibit alcohol. So we had bootleggers that came into this area of the floodplain at Congaree National Park, which it wasn't a park back then, but they made their moonshine back in here. So there's some remnants of some old moonshine area that they had established back in the early 19th century. But that 18th Amendment was passed in 1919, prohibiting the sale and consumption of alcohol in the United States, and moonshiners and bootleggers found refuge in places like these that were overrun with these trees and plants, and it made a nice little covering so they couldn't be discovered. And the iron box you see in the distance is an old steel. So that old steel, it's right, let me see, I can see it right through there. You can see the old iron box, and the iron box is an old steel used to make the alcohol, and water and corn squeezings were used to make a soured mash, and the mash was heated and distilled through copper tubing to produce moonshine. The Congaree floodplain's difficult terrain and tall trees made it a perfect environment and a place for moonshiners to hide stills and produce their illegal liquor. This is in South Carolina, and back in September 21st of 1989, we had a huge event that happened in this area, a weather event. It was called Hurricane Hugo, and it had associated with it high winds and tornadoes and all kinds of things that wreaked havoc in the southeastern portion of the United States. South Carolina was not immune to it, and this forest canopy suffered. It had high winds and broke off trees and knocked a lot of them over, the taller trees in this floodplain, and it did some damage. But that kind of damage in history to this area is important because it revives this forest and leaves open gaps in it so that the sunlight can shine through and provide the necessary sunlight and nutrients so that this forest can continue to rejuvenate itself. So it's important that we have those type of events. They seem like a disaster at the time, but when they happen, they revive the forest in a way that it expects it at a certain point, so that it doesn't get overrun by the taller trees, and some of them crash down and provide nutrients for the living animals and insects, as well as for the compost for the smaller, younger trees. So it's important for it. It seems disastrous, but it recovers and it revives. So pretty interesting park. This Boardwalk Loop is very nice, and I see a couple spots where the National Park Service has come in and replaced some boards and that kind of thing. So it requires maintenance on their part, but they're doing a pretty good job at keeping it nice for everyone. Yeah, the Sims Trail that I just crossed is a former road that went through the park. The roads historically used by hunters and fishermen and loggers are scattered throughout this park. They serve as a reminder of the long human history and use of this land. Just a few miles from this park, where the Congaree and Wateree rivers meet, a maroon settlement were comprised of individuals who escaped slavery on nearby plantations and formed their own independent communities. Rivers provided means for travel for them, finding food and acquiring supplies. Dense vegetation in the floodplain forest, like the twisted roots seen here, provided safety because of the difficulty it posed for slave owners and slave catchers to traverse it and pursue those that escaped. So they found this area to be a food source as well as an escape route, and they joined others that escaped slavery. Joining me on my adventures to see a Congaree National Park here in South Carolina today. If you enjoyed my video, and please hit the like button down below and consider subscribing to our channel and joining us on all of our adventures to see the national parks here in the United States. Whatever you're doing today, get out to the great outdoors and do something that makes you smile.